You've reached the Signal Watch, movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me this evening is...
Simon Day. Lovely to be with you again.
But we're actually recording in the same room.
We are. We can touch. Although we're not going to.
I feel like a song is about to come out. At last I can touch you.
Well, also, we're doing this because we tried to do this on Zoom last week. And we had like some very Skynet type technical takeovers, breakdowns. So we just kind of gave up.
We did, yeah. It was like Skynet didn't want us to tell the truth.
It's taken over half the internet, whatever that means.
Yahoo is down.
Breaking through the firewall.
So yeah, we're talking Terminator 3, which was your request, and I had not seen it since I saw it in the theater back in 2003.
Yeah, Rise of the Machines. A guilty pleasure for me. I think ages ago we said we were going to do some guilty pleasures, and we never did. This is a guilty pleasure. I can definitely see its flaws. We'll see if you think its flaws are as many or more than I do. But yeah, I've got a very soft spot for this. I think it does a lot of things right. And I was the same as you. I kind of saw this in the theatre originally. Obviously, I was there not opening night, but pretty early. And I saw it a handful of times. I probably saw it like 3 or 4 times in the theatre, to be honest. Bought the DVD, watched the DVD a lot initially, and then kind of put it away. And yeah, and just like, we've also kind of done an Arnie series, so when you were talking about what do you want to do, I'm like, well, that's a guilty pleasure. That's Arnie. That's so it's ticking off some boxes.
I do love a good robot movie. I do not like this movie.
Here we go.
I didn't like it in 2003.
Gloves off.
Rewatching it in 2023, I felt no better about it.
You didn't
and
like
maybe worse.
All the great jokes.
So we were just talking about the Jaws movies.
I said that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, so we were just talking about the Jaws movies, and we talked about like 1 and 2 kind of are of a certain quality, and then the third one amazingly dips in quality.
Yeah.
And part of it is they change a lot of stuff, and they refer back to things and whatnot.
We'll
get into it because we're going to do Jaws 3 is why we were talking about it. So I'm going to about Jaws 3.
Jaws 4, they all go insane. They take us to drugs and go insane.
But this movie is not James Cameron.
Well, that's a good point, because like James Cameron, you can feel James Cameron, obviously his stamp on the first 2 movies, and this one does feel different and it looks different. And it's mainly, I would say, this is more an Arnie movie than even the director, because the director Jonathan Moskow, who is a good director, was still kind of a director for hire brought in.
Yeah.
And it's obvious who's got the power here. Because Arnie, he likes a good joke, ha ha ha, and there's got a lot of good and bad jokes in this.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a mid-budget action flick from about 6 years before the movie came out. It feels like a mid-90s, mid-budget actioner that happens to have a Terminator in it.
That's interesting.
It feels like a knockoff Terminator movie is what it feels like.
I mean, it kind of is a knockoff Terminator movie.
It is.
Because
yeah.
it basically does the plot of T2 again, and then has a little twist at the end, which I think is one of its strongest points, is the ending.
I will agree with that now. I'm going to go ahead and spoil you.
Yeah.
I think the ending's actually like in a pretty darn good scene.
Well, let's say we're going to do spoilers in this, obviously, for people listening, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It is, because it is good. I think so. But yeah, so the two bits that stand out, the two good things about this, I think, are the ending and the fact that Arnie turns out to be the Terminator model that actually kills John Connor in the future, but he's been reprogrammed to come back and do other things. And I think those two are actually good ideas. Against that is, I think, an overabundance of humour. And I mean, like, there was humour in like the first, well, not so much the first Terminator, because that was more like a horror film. But there was like even in that had some black humour. But like, especially in the second one, there was obviously jokes, and there was some humour.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah. But it's like, but in this one, it's like they don't know when to stop.
It almost becomes a parody of itself.
Well, yeah, it is. I think it's like balancing not particularly well on the edge of spoof.
Yeah, I mean, so I wrote down several things. I haven't taken notes while watching a movie in some time. In this one, thank God I did, because it's been a while, as we said, between when we were supposed to record and when we did.
Yeah.
But I was like, I have too many specific things to say.
Well, the first warning, the first red flag, I think, is the boobs.
I think it starts before that. I think it's all part of that. The Terminators are supposed to be stealth robots.
Yeah.
This robot shows up naked. It doesn't have to.
Well, what about the first two films, though?
No. She can create clothes out of her own skin. We see it happen multiple times in the film.
That's true.
So she doesn't need to actually be nude. I'm not sure.
But Robert Patrick does as well.
I don't know why they did that.
Yeah.
I guess they returned, but she also, 2 seconds after she's there, she walks across the street in the middle of Rodeo Drive, completely naked. Not the stealthiest thing to do. And then she also, we learn a couple scenes later, she can turn on any vehicle and drive off with it, but instead she murders a woman in a convertible in the middle of the street while she's naked.
Yeah.
And takes her clothes, not takes them, but mimics them.
Mimics them.
Including a little diamond necklace for some reason, which I just kept looking at that necklace.
And her hair.
Yeah, why? But, so,
Well, the boobs got me. Don't they always?
Well, yeah, and when I mentioned to Stuart we were doing this, he's like, yeah, they have that whole thing with like the boobs at the beginning, and that's when you know this movie's going to be dumb. And I was like, yeah.
Well, I think it's partly because it's dumb, but it's also, she makes them bigger, but then she obviously kills the cop anyway, because she goes, I like your gun. And it's like, well, so why do you bother doing that anyway?
Yeah, it's just like a little, like you said, there's too many jokes, there's too many notes.
Yeah. And you know that Arnie, I mean, like, I remember, like, Arnie, obviously kind of doing press for this, and he'd be like, well, that bit where we fight in the bathroom and I throw it in the toilet, I want to have something floating in it, and all this stuff like this. And it's like, you can just tell this is Arnie, like, without the leash of James Cameron on him. So that, like, and some of these land. I mean, some of the stuff in this I really like. Mm. I like the quote where he goes like, why don't you like her? She's a healthy female, good breeding age. To John Connor, and he's like, I think there's a bit more to it than that. And then there's another great line later where he goes, your laughter is good. It alleviates anxiety and the fear of death when they're kind of like in the back of the camper. So there's stuff like that kind of works. But then there's the Elton John glasses that he kind of puts on. Well, also let's step back a little bit. So he goes in. Obviously, they're trying to do something a little bit different. They're not going to.
This is where I was like, this is a parody of itself.
Well, yeah. So they're not in a biker bar like they did in 2, but it's a ladies' night, and it's like, and he goes in, and and there's a gay stripper. Don't know why he has to be gay, but he is.
Yeah.
And he's like, talk to the hand, bitch, and all this. And like, Arnie grabs his hand.
I had kind of forgotten about talk to the hand as even a thing, and I was like,
was that even a thing at the time this came out?
Yeah, it would have. It would have been on its way out.
I think it was in England, but
yeah,
because we were all like, why does he keep saying that? It's bad.
Yeah, talk to the hand was like early meme culture.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it's like this is what I was thinking every time I watch this, and the last couple of times is. He's wearing a stripper's clothes for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it all be very easy to tear off? Because it's stripper's clothes. And he could even have Asta's chaps, for all we know, right?
Right.
So he could just, like, you know, it'd be hilarious if an alternative version of this is like, you know, bits of his clothing keeps going missing as the film goes on.
Anytime someone grabs him, you hear Velcro. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely all of that. It has a lot of weird little plot holes and that just kind of mount up over the course of the movie.
We can tell that originally they wanted to have Linda Hamilton in it, and she actually said, hey, look, you're only having me in it to kill me off halfway through this. I'm not going to do it, because I'm like a third wheel.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of tell that's been rewritten, because it's a bit clunky.
I mean, the whole movie to me is fairly clunky. I mean, right up until pretty much they're in the bunker at the end. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I kind of like the fact that it's her dad, Claire Danes' dad, kind of is working on Skynet, and he's the one that's like, I don't want to turn it on. I kind of quite like that.
So I have kind of mixed feelings about that, because we were told in 2 prior movies it was from this particular company. And then suddenly it's like, no, now Skynet is some sort of like military project.
Yeah.
That, and they never mentioned what was the Cyberdyne system,
Cyberdyne, yeah.
ever again. And the people who are, you know, working on it are never mentioned. And they just refer to like the civilian contractors. The thing that more than that kind of, so this is where I think there's a huge misstep with the Terminator franchise, because
it keeps telling the same story.
Well, because it's like it doesn't matter what you. The whole second movie was saying actually your fate is not. You're not locked into it.
Yeah.
That was it. It ended on.
You're producing these films.
It was this incredibly like kind of hopeful message at the end of this very bleak movie of you know, the Terminator died for our sins so we can have free will, and we don't think Skynet's probably not going to happen.
Well, I would have. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I would have liked to have seen Cameron come back, do a third part, final part, have the end of this. Where they're in the bunker, as the first 20 minutes, and then have the future war as the rest of the film, and end it with him sending back Kyle Reese, and them sending back the Terminator.
Keep it a closed loop.
Yeah,
I think that's acceptable. I you know, and that's kind of the tough thing about the Terminator movies anyway. Is the first 2. Is no matter what, John Connor, as long as he's existing next to Linda Hamilton and she's not back in her apartment with her iguana, we know that I guess something had to happen, or else they've split time into different multiverse, whatever.
Yeah. Don't go Marvel.
Sorry.
Everybody wants multiverse.
But it is a multiverse now.
Well, actually, you know, I think they didn't they do that in Terminator Genesis? They actually had like
Genesis and Dark Fate were supposed to be like multiverse things.
It's too late.
It just because basically like so Terminator 2 is all for no. There's no point to it, which is like my least like. I get why Alien 3 exists.
Yeah,
I hate that Alien 3. It did not need to be that movie. Like with like. You might have liked Aliens, but we're gonna kill off those characters you liked. Like, you know, that was all for nothing. You're stupid, audience. Yeah. Like,
I feel like even Alien 3. I part of me agrees, but then part of me thinks I like it had the balls to kind of do that and strip Ripley right back down to you're totally by yourself, and you're gonna end up killing yourself to end this. Of course, you know, because there's gonna be 4 more films, whatever. But like at the time, you know, But I think,
but they also lost me in the first 5 minutes of that movie. I never cared about it. I've never seen it again since.
There you go. God, I feel a podcast coming in. But because I love Aliens 3, actually.
I think it was a well-made movie, but anyway.
But
this is not about Alien 3. But I think Terminator 3...
But I do agree with Dark Fate just did it, and it came across as a fuck you, killing John Connor right at the start.
Yeah.
And then just going, we're going to replace with this little Hispanic girl who's exactly the same as John Connor, so why do you bother doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, just for shock value.
Yeah, and I think that... there was probably a different story to tell with that, and I think that with this movie, I don't know how you get away from doing the thing of they're constantly sending things back, because once you start getting into that logic loop, it's infinite. There's nothing to say. These are things that are coming off an assembly line, as we see in Terminator Salvation.
Yeah.
And so we know that there's an endless sea of them that could be, and so it doesn't make sense anymore that they're not sending them back by the truckload.
It's all singing, all dancing Arnie's.
Yeah.
But then, apparently, do you remember in the first Terminator, though, there were some others, just big muscular guys. So they shouldn't all look like Arnie.
And if you watched the show, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, they certainly didn't look like Arnie. And they got Summer Glau as a Terminator.
Yeah.
It was lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't get why. I get why they did it. It just feels really unimaginative to me at that point, and like they broke their own logic to the point where I feel like I don't want to feel smarter than a Terminator movie, and I didn't feel that way in the first two.
Yeah.
In this one, I'm like plot hole.
Yeah.
I will say I enjoyed the TX when she did dial up.
TX was good.
That was that was the only thing that was good.
Oh, that was when she did the eek.
Yeah, she did. I was like, oh, she's like, they didn't even. We weren't really still doing dial up in 2003, so that's.
This film was full of stuff that they weren't doing anymore.
Yeah, it's like that was a kind of a 1999 thing to do. That was kind of cool.
I'd also the bit where she licks the blood and goes, has a religious.
I have it written down as
happening.
Like she gets a lady boner when she gets positively horny when she tastes John Connor's blood.
Primary targets.
Yeah, she doesn't play a robot.
Well, she wouldn't do. Yeah, she wouldn't do that. Like as a Terminator, she wouldn't go, oh my god.
Right. She smiles like, haha, fuck you, like occasionally throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thing about Arnie as the Terminator in the first two movies.
Yeah.
Was.
Well, he was an old model, so he didn't even smile. He just went, right. Give me Uzi 9mm.
But it also was like, it's a robot. Your Honda does not feel pleasure. Your Honda does not does not like think it's funny that you just cut someone off or whatever. Like, it feels like the
she was smiling at her own kind of cleverness and jokes, which she wouldn't have done.
Right. It just felt like
because nobody else was there. It's not even like Robert Patrick pretending to be a police officer or whatever.
And that's where you can feel the difference in the quality of the movies.
Yeah.
Right. It's.
Well, even like so.
Does everything make sense? Is all I ask.
Well, I would even say some of these problems started with Cameron, but they were small in Cameron, and I think they've kind of like grown like a virus because what is his sunglasses fetish? Because in the first Terminator, he's
doing it to cover his eye.
He's got covered his eye. Yeah, he's just disguising himself. In the second one, he seems to think they're cool, but then he loses them quite early on. And then, like in this one, like the dude, every time they stop at 7-Eleven or for gas, he's trying to grab some. He's trying to grab a new pair, and it's like, and how does he know the Elton John ones are rubbish? Mm-hmm. Because why wouldn't he just go around wearing those until somebody goes, they look crap?
yeah. You gotta look a certain way. You gotta look cool. That's cool in this program.
He's wearing a stripper's old leathers. It's gonna look cool, but he doesn't smell cool.
Now there are some things that happen early on in the film that are kind of in the background that the movie I wish they had done a little bit more with it. But in another way, it's also kind of cool that they didn't. I don't know how to feel about it. The fact that in the first act, in the first 20 minutes, they're like, the internet's breaking. Like, we kind of laughed about, like, half the internet's. But
I've lost part of the internet.
Yeah, it's like they're all dealing with their shit of, like, there's robots trying to kill us. But, like, they go to the AM/PM, which is a chain of stores on the West Coast. And the guy's like, I don't know how to ring you up. Like, the system's down.
Yeah.
And so it's all this, like, little stuff, but you're like, oh, Sky, like, if you're paying attention, you know Skynet's already won.
Yeah.
Like, all of this is out of hand already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which also makes you wonder why they didn't send the Terminator back a week ahead of time or a month ahead of time or whatever.
Or several Terminators.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's an interesting bit that also draws attention to some of the problems with the film.
Well, there's lots of coincidences as well, like the fuel cell, isn't there? Because, like, it's very handy that he has 2 fuel cells. And
redundancy, and of course you'd have 2 fuel cells.
And one of them gets damaged.
Yeah.
And then we have an example of what happens if it gets damaged. It's like, how's he going to use the... Oh, right there in the film, he's going to stick it in her mouth. Although that might stop the doors coming down, so it might have actually killed John Connor.
Well, even then, like, the robot is, like, making, like, cartoon faces. Her eyes are like, no, like it's the end of Roger Rabbit or something.
So when I saw this in the theatre, though, originally, I know, and I will totally agree with you and say the CGI now is a bit like the Mummy films, where it's that late 90s, early 2000s CGI that kind of looks a bit wonky. But I did like the huge hunter-killer going past the screen and the turbine. You're almost getting the kind of like the wobbling air from the turbine on it. Because that was, because you remember, even Terminator 2, I don't think showed much of the future war. And obviously a lot of money was spent on this CGI. I mean, this was a really expensive film when it came out. You had multiple Terminators coming out of the sea and stuff, so I do think it has some good stuff like that. I did like that, and of course it calls back later because it has the mini version of those hunter killers. Yeah, which is a nice. I really like that little touch. Yeah. Although it's kind of like straight after that, they kind of like, I feel like they spoil it by having the T1s, which are basically like slightly crappier than Daleks.
So,
why would you build those?
Well, years ago, I mean, have you seen what they've got for robots now? I mean, that's the thing when everyone sees those, what are they, Boston, I can't remember the name of the company.
I think you could probably outrun them, though. They're very slow.
Yeah, but they're building these robots now that can run like cheetahs.
Oh shit!
And everyone's just like, stop making those. Boston Dynamics, is that the name of the company?
Stop AI now.
Right? Yeah, it's like the chat bot can already write a paper better than you can write a paper. Like, we don't need that to team up with this and then put a gun on top of it. Because the chat bot will yell at you.
It's like Robocop. It's going to look like Robocop.
Yeah.
You have 5 seconds to comply. Wasn't there a bit of a low rent scheme as well that the Terminators have in this? Because they're not looking for John Connor, they're looking for his deputies, a bunch of high school kids, and they just kind of accidentally stumble over the fact that John Connor's there, which is like a huge coincidence again.
Right. So also our stealth robot, our brilliant stealth robot,
shooting people, driving.
She goes around in a very flashy car wearing a red leather suit. She has the ability to change her look.
She's seen Basic Instinct.
Yeah, she chooses not to change her look. And the police are never like, hey, this lady's killed like 5 people. Like, we need to get on the news and tell people to look out for this person. Like, if that's happening.
Because it would, yeah. The big police cars like that bit where Arnie shoots out the window in T2. It should be like that. They should have her surrounded pretty early on in this, really. Except maybe she keeps changing appearance.
But she doesn't.
Well, we don't see that. I'm making it up for the film.
She also has.
Why does she always change back to her evil self when she's approaching somebody she wants to kill, rather than just stay disguised as a boyfriend? Because then she could like just stab him or crush him.
And this is kind of the thing, right? I mean, this is where I feel like the movie was just lazy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And like, where does she keep a flame? Where's the fuel for the flamethrower? Like, how's that working? Like, you have to have a big ass tank of fuel to have a flamethrower.
Nanobots, but she's not all nanobots, is she? Actually, she's got a chassis underneath.
She does, but like, she'd have to have a tank of something in there that's actually flammable.
Could say the same about James Bond's Aston Martin, though. It wouldn't.
But he doesn't like keep shooting flames over and over and over, does he?
We kept shooting loads of bullets at the start of No Time to Die, didn't he? Where would all those bullets be? Because the car wouldn't be able to move; it'd be so heavy.
Anyway, I mean, but that's the kind of stuff that, like, you could tell they were like, well, that would be cool, but not. Does it logically make sense, or does it work? Like, I would have had less of a problem of her shooting like a taser or like lightning from her hands, like something spinning up and going, like, all you need is a couple of magnets.
Well, she has a cussing thing. That's quite good. She kind of kills the boyfriend with, I guess, a saw or something.
Yeah, but where did that come from?
She's like a Swiss Army.
Yeah, I mean, that was
Swiss Army arm.
Hang on 1 second.
Great. God. Hey. Stop. You want to come here?
Now the crane scene.
Oh, so I was going to say that I think the truck chase there encapsulates the best and worst of this, because on the one hand, I love seeing how much damage the Terminator can take. Kind of Arnie, because he gets kind of put through literally a couple of buildings. But then on the other hand, you've got almost, like you say, that almost like Looney Tunes where he's knocked off the hook and it's like.
So I wrote down there during the crane scene there are two
it's
cartoon.
Down.
Yeah, there's a boing and something else goes dong when they hit it, and
he's on the front of the fire truck with his glasses hanging off, going, "Stop the truck," and that's supposed to be funny, I think.
Yeah, it all turns into kind of like Roadrunner cartoons. I do like the scene. I think it's why I show up for a Terminator movie.
Yeah.
And one of the crazy things is apparently Schwarzenegger had to renegotiate his contract because he was supposed to get paid a bunch up front.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, we have to cut that scene," and so he was like, we cannot cut that scene. That's it. That's what makes this a Terminator movie.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, renegotiated for just getting back end on the movie.
Yeah.
So they could afford to do that big long truck. But they were. Can you imagine this movie without that set piece?
Well, because that is a big one, really. There isn't much apart from that. And
you get like the graveyard scene and the amazing scene in the veterinarian's office. That'd be about it.
We got the end where I've got the biggest chopper. My chopper's bigger than yours. But that's quite short. So most of it's just kind of fist fights almost.
Yeah. So they're just not thinking on the same scale. Like, you can tell the.
Well, Cameron always finished with the truck chase, I guess, and then a factory.
Well, I mean, we talk about Terminator 2. Like, it's hard to say, like, what makes up the third act of Terminator 2, because it just keeps happening.
Yeah,
There's a car chase, and then they're in the, they fight, and you think you've blown up and you've frozen and blown up the T whatever 1000, and then he reintegrates, and now we're fighting through the factory.
Well, like you said, even controlling the other machines, you know, they kind of tease it, but it doesn't really go anywhere, because she kind of does it to a few cars, and they just ram them a bit, and then get kind of wiped out. And then later on, because the real big waste in this, I think, is the fact that what she does to Arnie, she like corrupts his CPU. Yeah. I think it would have been great if he had turned properly evil for 10 minutes of this. Now maybe they can't do that because it's a PG-13 instead of an R-rated film, but it would have been great instead of like Arnie trying to act kind of badly, right? It's like I feel a bit dizzy, like that. It's like, well, you actually have him going back to what he was in the first film.
Yeah.
And
instead you get him like punching a truck.
Yeah.
Which the scene is better than I remembered it.
It's also actually the only time in the film where I think Arnie looks old. I know if it's the makeup or whatever, or just how they lit it. But like, I think the rest of the film, he looks amazing because it's 12 years after Terminator 2. He actually managed to work out and get down to the same measurements, which is impressive.
As a guy who's hitting 48 this year, that's
Well, yeah, because I think he was probably older than us when he made this.
Yeah.
But he kind of gets away with it most of the film with a bit of makeup and stuff. But I feel like in that scene, he looks kind of knackered and old. And I know he's supposed to be damaged, but I mean, on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. We haven't also talked about the rest of the. We talked a bit about the T3. Christina Loken, who plays the TX.
She does a good job with what she's got, I think.
I'm not sure she does because I don't if I were her, I would have argued and said I'm not smiling here.
Yeah.
I don't think she really thought about. She thought about what an assassin would do. She didn't think about what the robot is not here to crack jokes.
Yeah.
Claire Danes is gone on to be an award-winning actor. People at this point mostly would have known her from she'd been on a show called My So-Called Life that was like a teen drama. I thought she was the bee's knees when that show was on.
Yeah.
And
did you like her in this?
I think she is the only real actor. And she's given so little to do. Nick Stahl, R.I.P.
Don't put Nick Stahl down.
He's so... I'll go ahead and say it. He's a weird-looking dude.
Well, he's also he seems kind of very... how he's playing this, I'm not sure if he's trying to play he's traumatized from past events. But it's it's a weird mix of not acting enough but acting too much, I think.
Well, the way the character is written, and this is not something I blame on weird-looking Nick Stahl, R.I.P., is...
I didn't know he died.
Yeah, he got into drugs immediately after this and never really recovered.
It's the Terminator curse, dude.
It's 100%, man.
Because the reason he's in it is... Because they kind of span it we want an older John Connor.
Yeah.
But the real reason was they gave Edward Furlong, I think, 2 years to get his act together, and he just didn't. So they were like, we can't use him. Yeah, it's
let's get some other drug addict. R.I.P. I'm sorry. But the way the character's written, this guy is supposed to know from middle school on that his destiny is to save the world.
Yeah.
He does nothing the whole time but shriek and run away from things and go, someone tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Including turning, and so you start realizing, okay, I said when we did the T2 podcast, I think Terminator is Sarah Connor's story, and everything that doesn't do Sarah Connor basically just fails, including, now we've seen Dark Fate, a movie with Sarah Connor, which I think also failed.
Yeah.
But
I mean, how he plays it, it's very whiny.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, he was kind of a whiny little brat in Terminator 2. So
but he also has now realized,
yeah. But did he think it was all over? So this is all a big shock to him.
I mean, I don't know if I really care.
Yeah.
I need to see the ... This guy is going to lead the world after all of these events.
It rang a bit hollow, I thought, when they were in the bunker at the end. And, actually, I think it's Claire Danes that says it, but she's like, we could just let the bomb go off.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's quite happy for that to happen until somebody talks. And I'm like, I'm not quite sure after everything they've just been through, he'd be that much of a pushover with, let's just die. Because, I mean, I feel like, Arnie's just sacrificed himself to get you in there. And it's obviously, this is happening. So, this is the time to embrace your destiny, basically.
Yeah, I don't think you really see John Connor appear until that second. Yeah. The one that I'm kind of looking for.
Because they have that hilarious flash forward, don't they, where they have him in old makeup going, come on, everybody. He's like, I don't know if they'd follow him. It's this little skinny guy.
Yeah, I don't know why they chose to do that. I think, now if this hit a writer's room where they were not so worried about, it's really about Arnie fighting the TX.
Yeah.
they would have given more to do. Like, how hard is it to put a gun in his hand when they find the cache of guns in his mother's grave?
Yeah.
Instead, they're like, nope, we're going to put you in a wooden casket, which is absolutely not bulletproof. And then he's going to walk out carrying the casket, which will now be empty of all of those weapons, which will somehow magically make their way from the grave into the car.
Well, wouldn't it have been easier if he'd have gone like, he's kidnapping me, and Arnie could have just carried
There's a million things they could have done, but it ain't what they did.
Kind of looks cool, him carrying a coffin, though.
It reminded me of the log from Commando, so I liked it.
And you get the Dr. Silverman joke, even though he wouldn't be there either.
Yeah, I mean, again, the thing's like turning into a parody of itself. So
I do like, though, as soon as he sees Arnie, he doesn't say it, he just runs off.
Yeah.
It's
like, good.
Does an old man run down the hill?
Yeah.
I'm out here. Yeah.
But yeah, it just has like so many spots that I just think are so rough through the whole film.
Yeah.
And at the very end of it,
let's talk about what you did like.
Okay.
So you like the end.
I like Claire Danes' hair. I thought her wardrobe was good.
Nice dye colour.
Yeah, nice dye color. She was good.
What do you think about the CGI? Was the CGI held up?
So I don't pay attention to, like, if a movie, whatever era movie came out in, my brain just locks in and says that was the state of the art, right? I mean,
I feel like most of it was good, very good for the time, but I kind of wish there'd be more practical, but they did so much stuff that they probably couldn't do practically.
Yeah, and I sometimes I'll be watching something and I'll have no idea something was CGI. Like, maybe all the exteriors were when they were in the military base. Like, I don't know, like, what was on the other side of that glass for real or what was CGI.
Yeah.
And I actually liked the dumb T1 tank robots because I'm like, this totally looks like something. It's got treads and it's got guns. Like, I can totally see the military paying for that.
I do like where Arnie jumped down and grabbed the gun off the other one and shot the other one.
I had some questions about that. I was like, does it have a trigger? Like, how is he firing the gun? But
with his magic finger.
Yeah, he can't control machines, especially a gun. Is he just, sending a charge to the firing mechanism? I don't know.
So what do you think about when they had a fight and she knocks his head off and then she kind of starts him up again? What did you think about? Because I'd like I say, I feel the potential for that. I feel like the same as the Thing prequel, the potential for having a female in one of these films, just from a sexual point of view, is very, very high. And there's a lot of creepy things you could do, and they just didn't do anything in either film with that potential, really. Now this one's got the slight excuse that it's like a PG-13 or whatever, but it's like, I don't know, like I say, it's like,
if you're making a stealth assassin robot that's going after a bunch of like teenagers,
Species, be something more like Species.
Yeah, well, do a Venus flytrap with her. I mean, I'm not saying like, anyway, I just made that really dirty, but but there's lure. How hard is it to lure a teenage boy? Yeah, and you've already decided it's basically is female in form.
Yeah.
So why not do something with that plot wise? And it just instead feels like, oh, Tomb Raider was this adventurous video game that happened to have a female lead. What a concept! Let's make it a female Terminator. It's a girl Terminator.
It's a girl Terminator.
Yeah. And so
Terminatrix. Yes. I'll have you know.
I just realized that's probably where TX came from. Oh God. Oh man. But yeah, I don't think that they did. I had not really thought about it a whole lot because I was so like, why is this Terminator such a bad robot as I was watching it? But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely makes way more sense for a stealth assassin droid that can look like anybody and mimic human behavior. Like,
oh yeah, totally. I mean, I try to think. I mean, I'm a machine. Oh, and he says many times in this. But like, yeah, that scene, I just feel like that scene where he is corrupted, that really could have been the pinnacle of this, and it just turns into him some goofy acting on his part, where he's like, I must, but I cannot, but I must. It's actually like Robot Monster. Do you remember that movie Robot Monster, where the guy's in the gorilla suit?
Yeah, I was going to say, are we talking about the guy with
the diving helmet on?
Yeah.
And he goes, I must, but I cannot. But it is my mission, but I cannot. I'm like the bloody Terminator 2 is ripping off one of the worst movies ever made. There's like in that scene.
I mean, a lot of, it gets in RoboCop, of course, has already done the thing of like, I have my directives, but I'm going to what's going to happen with it.
Yeah.
So it would have been more interesting had they gone ahead and gone for it, and maybe John Connor has to put down the Terminator. Like, it's a machine.
Yeah.
Like, and God knows they keep showing up, so I'm not going to miss it for long.
Yeah.
So
wouldn't that have been amazing? Because he was like, I mean, saying that, it's also like, I felt that was a bit stupid on John Connor's part, where he's like, oh, you came back, hey, you'll be there, you always do, and like Arnie's like, I'm a different Terminator. It's like, no shit, of course he's a different Terminator. You saw the other one melts.
Well, they were saying that for the dumb people in the audience.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I mean,
plus I guess it could be the same Terminator.
I mean, it gets all timey-wimey. It could have been. That's the problem with time travel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they could have done a lot more. I actually wrote down literally 2 minutes before, because I'd forgotten about why he goes crazy on John and has to punch a truck.
Yeah.
But I wrote down, why hasn't the TX gone after the Terminator and just taken him over, if that's an ability she has?
Yeah.
And then she did, and I had to erase my line. I no longer felt very clever and smarter than the movie.
Well, but it was almost like she was just kind of fucking with him, or like torturing him. It's not like she was like, this would be a really clever plan because he's close to them.
Yeah. Well, his head was already popped off at that point, right?
But does his head need to be popped off? Because she could have done it to him when she kind of knocks him out early on at the veterinary clinic.
Oh, we haven't even talked about that. I have so many questions about that sequence, but yeah, she could have.
So apparently that was Arnie's first day of filming when he drove the truck through the wall. And he said he felt very silly wearing the Terminator stuff for a few hours until he kind of warmed up. Because he said he hadn't done it for 12 years and he felt like he was almost doing like a cosplay.
I believe that. Yeah, so during that sequence, I don't really... There's some...
Lucky you bounced over Claire Danes there as well. Do you know that exactly?
Yeah.
Or was that just luck?
He calculated the whole thing. And Claire Danes emits a shield that protects her from criticism and trucks.
Also, lucky he stole a truck with a gun in it.
So, also... Initially, I thought, Claire Danes is called into the vet's office at 4:30 in the morning.
Annoying old lady with a cat.
Yeah, I was like, well, the Terminator called her in to get her there instead of just going to her house. But that's not what happened. It's a lady with a cat.
Yeah.
So how does the Terminator know to go there at 4:30 in the morning?
Because she's one of his lieutenants in the future. So she's going to go and kill her anyway.
But how does she know at 4:30 in the morning she's gone to work? That is an unlikely scenario.
I mean, maybe she doesn't. Maybe she's just going there to check it out. But you'd have thought she'd go. She'd
go to the apartment. Yeah.
Well, yeah, she probably won't be there at that time of day.
Right. Like, it makes way more sense for her to just come through the window and kill her.
Well, also, why go with a policeman disguised as the boyfriend, but then go nuts and kill both of them before they get to the place they want to be? Good gory scene though. I quite like the hand through the person. All they did was stupid as well. They could have just shot him and pushed him out of the car. It's been easier. Because now she's got to drive all the way like that.
Oh yeah, I was like, her arm's not actually long enough, and now she can't reach the gas pedal, so I don't know what she's doing. But I guess she took over the car. But yeah, but then cops arrive, fire department's there.
Yeah.
And
I did like that. He's so heavy, we can't get him up.
But no one's noticing there's this, like, attractive woman in a red leather suit just wandering around the scene. Like, no one goes like, hey, are you... Like, no one addresses her. It's like she's invisible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's just walking around.
And she's messing with all their stuff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is... It was kind of crazy. It was kind of a very bad scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was a good way to kind of get John and what was the character Claire Danes' character's name?
Was it Kate?
Into a similar place, and then to have kind of this callback of like,
Yeah.
I know you. Like,
Yeah.
you had this crazy... Like, I liked that. Like, I thought that was a clever, like... You've done some pre-connection with the characters.
Yeah.
She knows something went on with this guy, and his step-family or foster family was murdered.
Yeah, yeah. She does say you disappeared, like, one weekend when you were 12. And then, you know, your foster parents turned up dead. And that was a nice little link to the previous film.
But then she takes the guy who's supposedly been trained in like military stuff his whole life, and she locks him in a cage, and he's just like, "Oh no!"
Yeah. Well, he's drugged up, and he has hurt.
That's true. That's
and he has hurt his leg.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guess she does have the advantage there. See, this is what happens when it's been a week since I've seen the movie. I forgot that. I just remember seeing him in the cage and being like, "That's not a dignified scene for this actor."
It just cheered me up that the annoying cat lady got shot. Because she's like, I think it's got a hairball, and I'm like, this is the most annoying thing.
I mean, I don't mind that the lady was shot, except that we get to see the robot TX do dial-up, so she can download pictures of the high school class or whatever.
Would she have files of her own?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what she was accessing there, but she, so she should know what Kate looks like.
Yeah,
from that's how she's going around finding people. But then she walks in and she's like, Kate, whatever her name is, and it's clearly not her.
Yeah,
and then but she shoots her anyway. Because the lady's like, what? And who cares? I guess it's a Terminator. That's what they do.
Yeah. Well, I guess they can't. Well, yeah. Yeah. No, you're right.
I was going to say, I'm just remembering Arnie go through the hallway in T2 with the rose box and just like shooting the shit out of everything. I'm like, Terminators don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
Once they're in that scenario.
Yeah.
But until they get into that scenario, they need to be stealth robots. That is why they exist.
But aren't we saying as soon as they cast Arnie, that stopped being a major like decision, didn't it? Because he like stands there like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Because wasn't it supposed to be Lance Henriksen originally? He was going to be the Terminator, and then last minute Cameron was like, "Oh," because even Cameron was like, "No, it's stupid." Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like he stands out like massively.
Yeah.
But then they were like, "Oh, we could just do it as like a threat, like a big threat instead, and go that way instead." So yeah, but yeah, I mean, like it doesn't make any sense really because you spoil them all away.
Yeah.
Yeah. But well, other pluses. I really like the music by Marco Beltrami.
I agree.
I think
it's a good score.
I think I'm going to say it'd be heresy here, but I think it's better than Brad Fiedel because I think Brad Fiedel, obviously the Terminator theme, fantastic, but apart from that, just a lot of clanking. His themes for the first two films, to be honest.
I'm not going to disagree. That is what the in my head, that's what the Terminator theme is. Yeah.
Whereas I think, Marco Beltrami actually had some very sad, nice orchestral pieces in this that kind of like help the mood. I mean, but what else can we say? This was the 7th biggest film of the year.
I mean, that tells you something. Like, I don't think we should just dismiss that as a fact. Like,
yeah.
So I remember I was living in Phoenix at the time. I was working.
I mean, Arnie needed a comeback as well at this point because like he hadn't really had a hit.
This is post 6th Day, End of Days, all that stuff.
Collateral Damage and Batman and Robin had underperformed and
we can't blame Arnie for that. He was great in that.
You're not sending me to the cooler.
Every time I think of him in that bathrobe,
and 100 other jokes he wrote.
Oh, so good. I don't like that movie, but he's so good in it.
But it was a big hit. It was a big because that's
a hit, but it was nowhere close to T2.
No. But then it's also like it's also coming out the same year as Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So,
But it should have been at that level.
Yeah.
It was a lack of vision and
well, it's like you said, it feels like a copy, and not just a copy of T2, but almost like a spoof for T2.
yeah.
You know.
And that's when it gets weird. Like, it's like, oh, this old bit where Arnie's got to come back and get his clothes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make a big jokey scene this time.
Well, yeah, because it's doing the same shit for the third time. It's basically like one good Terminator comes back, bad Terminator comes back. We catch her with John Connor or like Sarah Connor or whatever, and then like they both converge on them, have a fight. The good one manages to win and gets away with them, and then it's like boom, boom, yeah. Same old, really.
Yeah.
So they're telling the same story for the third time, yeah.
And
But there's some. I feel like some of the jokes are good. I like where, he's got like Claire Danes in the back of the truck, and he's like, relax, and he's like, and then like, what is it? John Connor says like saying, tell her who I am. It's like you don't see Arnie. The thing just slides back. He goes, John Connor is leader of the worldwide resistance for like, and he slams the thing again. So it's got some stuff that works in there.
yeah, I wouldn't say it's an abject failure as a movie.
It just doesn't hang together.
It's just not anywhere near the same level of the first two movies.
No.
And it's still that era, and it may be like Lord of the Rings and all that kind of ushered in. If you're going to do sequels, you need to keep upping things, not cutting the budget.
Yeah.
Which is something like
Well, also
it took until the Daniel Craig movies for the Bond franchise to realize, just because I know you spent $60 million on the last one, why are you spending $15 million on the next one?
Yeah.
Like, if you made $100 million off that, it's not so you can sit on your pile of riches.
Yeah.
You need to keep putting money back into the franchise. And
Yeah.
it was a very weird choice for the studio to say, we're going to let...
Well, this costs
This-
a lot, though. You got to remember this costs like nearly 200 million.
What?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look like it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. You say that. I feel like it does. Because, I only took a chunk of that. It took like 30 million. But, think of all the CGI in this. There's like a ton compared to the first two Terminator films. Even compared to the second one. And it's like, all the explosions, all the action. It is kind of up there on the screen. I just feel like the script isn't there.
It feels small.
Yeah.
The whole
I
time.
think you're right with that. I think the scope's not as big as Cameron. Definitely.
Yeah. Which is crazy, because there's all this shit happening that it ends in nuclear Armageddon, which the other two only threatened.
Well, I also feel like Cameron's felt like almost organic. Like the narrative, whereas this feels like stage. It's like we're staging this scene.
Yeah.
We're staging this scene.
And that's why it feels like a 90s action movie to me.
Yeah. It's like, now we're here.
Yeah, it's like, tell me what the plot of Bad Boys is. Not a clue, but I can tell you different sequences from Bad Boys.
Yeah. No, totally.
So, that's what I think. That's why I said it felt like a 90s movie to me.
Well, I think I'm nearly out of stuff, but I've got a couple of things I got to mention. So one of them is this always made me laugh because at the time I lived in Sheffield when I saw this in the north of England, and there was a big shopping centre kind of close to me called Crystal Peaks, and of course in this they keep saying we've got to get to Crystal Peaks. So I always found that amusing. So I know where I'm going when the bomb drops. And the other one, say, do yourself a favour. Get a DVD copy of this with Arnold's commentary. Because I think this is the first commentary he ever did. And I think he demanded to be paid for it. Which is why after this, companies started putting in a clause saying, no, that's part of your duties.
Yeah.
So he got paid again. And it's the worst fucking commentary ever. Because literally, I watched it one night quite drunk with a friend of mine, like 20 years ago, and it's him going, either saying exactly what's happening in the film. So he's like going like, and now I'm getting out of the truck and I have a gun and I'm looking for John Connor, but I cannot find him. So most of it's him doing that, But the other half of it is him just talking about his exercise regime. So literally the first hour, I think it's him going, so every morning I do the 60 reps, and then I do the squats, and then I'm like, whoever paid him for this must be furious, because it's like a terrible commentary. I mean, it's actually so bad it becomes hysterically funny. But it's like, but if you ever get a chance to listen to it, just go for it.
I believe that that's what he did, especially in that era, before people were really used to kind of doing the commentaries.
Well, he's also by himself in a room, whereas they obviously should have given him somebody to talk to bounce off.
Yeah, can you imagine if they left him on with Cameron in there and those two watching the movie? That would have been
That would have been
amazing.
great. Actually.
Yeah, that I would pay for.
Yeah.
I did write down something that I kind of said earlier, but I am going to really drive home this point.
Go for it.
Because I wrote it down and I remember it now, and I'm glad I did. I wrote down, by existing, this movie makes the argument that John existing doesn't matter. If he let the Terminators kill him when he was 13, he would have at least spared everyone else the trauma and pain that him existing causes through Terminators 2 and 3. Since they're
Yes.
going to have a nuclear exchange anyway,
Yes.
and apparently Kate's the one who's going to save the day anyway.
Well, no, because the flip side of that argument, I see your argument, and I agree with it. But the flip side is, you still need him to stop the machines in the future. Now, at some point, as we found out in this film, a Terminator is going to kill him, but that might have been after they won.
I don't disagree with that, but we also know from Dark Fate now.
Are we taking that into account?
Yes, we are, because they made it and they made me watch it.
Is this linked to the same continuity there? Because I feel like at this point, I
I
have
think
no
we
idea what's going on.
multiversed, yeah. But yeah, it basically, like, I was like, there's a strong argument that John and Sarah being killed in the first movie may have been the best bet for humanity.
Yeah.
Like, because the
Well,
Terminators.
it's always going to happen, isn't it? It's always going to happen. It's
Yeah.
like a circle.
Right.
You can't stop it. So it's like it's like 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis. It's
Right.
like you can kind of go back,
Yeah,
but you're going to end up like just being part of the same circle.
yeah, one way or another.
Yeah. You can't stop it.
So yeah, I have some, I guess, weird feelings about the term, like, because I think Terminator 2 is such a great solid ending of like
Yeah.
her going, oh my god, for 14 years or whatever,
Yeah.
I have believed that fate is, you can't put your hand on the wheel, like
Yeah.
you're rolling forward constantly on this road, and now I know. Now the world's my oyster. Anything's possible. Like how euphoric you would feel after that, and going, I think we stopped it. We blew up Cyberdyne. We've melted the Terminators.
Yeah.
And then the military's like, oh, we made something called Skynet, y'all. Woo! Which, yeah, it doesn't. The whole thing doesn't make sense anyway. It's like, no, why are you building an application that does, has the missile silos tied in with payroll? Like,
Yeah.
It was one of those things people threw around in this era of like,
Well, it's that millennium tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of I guess post-millennium tension at this point, but yeah, it's like
that's a really good point. Yeah, I was
because
still
the
coming off
Matrix
the
was the
Y2K,
same,
yeah.
and it was like
People knew computers were out there, knew they were really powerful, knew that they were networked, and so it must mean it's all one thing.
Yeah. And at the end, he kind of says, I do like the fact that he says, well, we could have never stopped it. There was never like a big computer to blow up
Yeah.
because it was everywhere. So at least they kind of.
That's what I liked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's this, that said, once the nuclear missiles fall, which the computer would have known, you now have an EMP and you knocked all your data centers out. So now you have no internet. So until the Skynet actually was satellite based, which was what my assumption in the first two movies, then, which is why I thought it was called Skynet, because I thought it was in the
it's
sky.
like Reagan, very Reagan-ish, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was like a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, it's on the ground. I'm like, do you know what happens if there's no electricity?
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Yeah. With it, I mean, like, we haven't really talked about it, but like the kind of development hell of this was like huge, and it went on for years. And I thought about writing stuff down, but there was just so much stuff that happened, I didn't bother. But basically, the original production company that made Terminator 2, I think Carlco, went bankrupt, mainly because of Cutthroat Island in the mid-90s.
That's one we've got to do sometime. Oh my god. Okay, compared to T3,
everything comes back to Cutthroat Island.
Yeah, T3 is Citizen Kane compared to Cutthroat Island.
It's a deal. It's a date. But yeah, so that put them out, and then after that, Cameron was going to do it. He was off and on. Arnie was going to do it, but only if Cameron did it. He was off and on. They had loads of different kind of things. They had loads of different directors coming in talking about it. 20th Century Fox were going to buy it for Cameron, and and it just kind of went on and on. So I mean, good for them that they actually finally did make it. And like I say, I'm not wearing rose-tinted glasses here. I know it's very dodgy, but I like a bit of dodgy Arnie rather than no Arnie.
I get that. I appreciate that point of view. I just get so distracted when I'm watching a movie, and
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like nothing that's, and of course, I work somewhat in IT, so I'm already like usually it's like poking holes in everything where there's a computer or robots or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm always impressed when I can't. But. And I'm not a developer. I'm not like a super genius on any of this stuff. But it's really hard. It'd be like if you knew a whole lot about dogs and you watch a movie and a dog flies through the air and you're like, dogs can't do that.
It's like every film these days.
Yeah.
So women can't follow that. Contentious but true. But it's like can't take down like a 300 kind of pound guy. But actually, it's funny you should say that because a lot of guys I've worked with have been in the army.
Yeah.
And what drives them to distraction is war films where guns don't sound right.
Yeah.
Or they've got like way too much ammo than they would have, or So it's a good point.
I mean, we all at this point sit there counting how many shots go off from a gun when we're watching a movie, right? We're like, that guy
25.
shot like 20. that thing held 10 bullets with one in the chamber. Like that was not happening. But yeah,
you never reloaded once.
It makes it hard to watch, and then you start kind of going, well, what is the logic of all of this? Because the Terminator films are a logic puzzle in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And the logic on this one just didn't feel like it held particularly well to me.
Well, it's also kind of starts off from like a slightly weak concept, doesn't it? Because it's like, oh well, we just postponed Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And this Terminator's kind of going around just kind of mopping up the less important lieutenants of John Connor because they can't find John Connor. They've given up on that. Yeah. And it's like, so really, it's like already it kind of starts off in a kind of weaker position. It doesn't feel like a game changer.
Yeah, I mean...
But then actually, I like the end because the end kind of flips that and goes, well, yeah, all the way through this. And actually, when you think back to it, all the way through the film, John Connor is saying, no, we have to stop it. And Arnie is saying, we can't stop it. He's just not listening to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of why I like the end. Like, he'd been saying all along, that's why he's locked us in this, awesome 60s, mod bunker, where we have enough food and whatever to make it for, some X amount of time.
Yeah.
And it was also, I noticed, like, everything's analog in that bunker, which, they don't need to worry about, Skynet peeping them when they're in there.
Yeah.
And clearly he and Kate were going to get to know each other because now they're in there for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I eventually saw Salvation, didn't care for it.
No. I mean, I think Salvation, from what I remember, is in Cameron's films, like the future war is very, we're underground. We're nearly wiped out. It's down and dirty. Every time you go outside of Terminator, just blow your head off. and it's always dark and kind of horrible. And yeah, Salvation turned into like quite a fun Mad Max film.
Yeah.
Where it's like, let's go hunting terminators in the sun, and we'll have cocktails later on the veranda. And I was like, that's not right.
Yeah, it never felt like a Terminator movie.
Yeah.
It felt like a sci-fi of some kind.
Yeah.
I never saw Genesis. I did see Dark Fate. Was there any other Terminator movie?
Genesis started out kind of pretty interesting, kind of rewriting the 1984 film. I mean, you've seen in the trailer where the young Arnie comes back, and then the old Arnie turns up and shoots him, and it's like, I knew you were coming, and it's like, so that started off kind of good, then just evolved into a mess. And then Dark Fate, I think Dark Fate, different set of problems, but yeah.
We did a podcast several years ago now where we covered Dark Fate, but if you think I'm grumpy about this movie, I was very grumpy about Dark Fate. Because I thought it was such a chance to actually turn the ship around, and now I'm like, I think I was done with the Terminator. Like, no new Terminator stuff. That said, if you've never seen it, I highly recommend the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Really good, yeah. And stupidly cancelled when it was getting really good. We're getting better, actually.
Yeah. It has an amazing cast. It has Shirley Manson in it.
Yeah, as a urinal. She turns into a urinal at one point. Do you remember that?
Does she really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my god. Yeah, it was a really smart show. But they put it on like Friday nights on Fox or something, so they had no faith in it from day one, which was stupid.
Yeah.
This is I got nothing else about T3. You asked what I liked about it. I mean, I like the truck chase scene.
Yeah. You like the ending.
Action. I like the ending. I like Claire Danes. And I like the kind of, there's stuff happening in the background all the time that like no one's paying attention to. It's like the world is ending.
Yeah.
If you pay attention right now, John Connor, you're fucked.
And isn't that what they say though? We wouldn't notice the little things that would lead to.
That's true.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got some good bits. It probably might watch this again in another 20 years. I guess 67-year-old Ryan will hobble his way over.
He'll be ready for it again.
Yeah, it's like whatever. I need to download Terminator 3 to my brain now.
You'd be like Sarah Connor. You'd be like, I've been preparing for 20 years.
Let me turn on my Disney Plus app in my brain. Disney has also bought the Terminator movies now. Actually, were those Fox? No, Fox didn't.
No.
Okay.
No. Well, actually, I don't know. Were they the last couple? Maybe the last couple were. I don't think this one was.
Sarah Connor's a Disney princess.
Yeah. I'd pissy her.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for putting up with us. It's been really fun actually being in the same room. As much as I enjoy doing this over Zoom, there's nothing quite like actually having you here in my dining room / studio.
It's also nice not saying, is it your connection or mine, every 5 minutes.
Oh, God, y'all have no idea.
Start again. Say it again. Say the last sentence again. We'll edit it in.
Yeah, the only thing we're going to have to edit out is when my dog started randomly barking at Simon. So, anyway.
I'm not a Terminator. That's why I wasn't barking at me because I'm a Terminator.
He heard your servos firing. He did not. My dog is deaf as a post. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. And we will see you around like a donut.
I should have said, we'll be back.
Oh, Jesus. That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.